to the counseling website, probably either tomorrow or by Friday. As well as the actual PowerPoint will be there so that if you want to go back and reference it, you can. I am going to turn my camera off while I'm doing the presentation to just help with bandwidth and make sure that Teams doesn't do anything wonky on me. But you will still be able to hear me. So welcome to the Junior Information Night. We're so happy that you're here, and we have a lot of information to get through, like I said, but it's all fun information, so let's go. Let's get into it. Okay, so first, just some virtual meeting helpful hints. I know we're all by this point probably very well versed in virtual meetings and what to do, but just some reminders. During the presentation, please, if you have any questions, type them into the chat. Some of the other wonderful counselors are going to be manning the chat and answering them as I am talking. Try to keep your questions about the current slide, because you may ask a question that I'm going to cover in a couple slides. And if that's the case, the other counselors will probably let you know, like, oh, just hang on, we're about to cover that. And just also, please keep in mind that your questions are going to be viewable by all of the other attendees. So if you're asking something, just make sure you're okay with everyone seeing the question. Otherwise, you can, save maybe a question that is a little more, sensitive information. You can always save that to just ask your counselor individually. We will also have Q&A at the end of the presentation to allow participants to ask any maybe final questions that weren't answered or that you think of at the end. And we will continue that. And then, like I said, the presentation is being recorded and is going to be posted on the counseling website so that you can go back and you can refer the recording as well as the actual PowerPoint. So first things first, here is the Chattahoochee High School counseling staff. So we have a picture of all of our counselors. Hopefully by now you are familiar with who your student's counselor is. We have our caseloads broken down by last names. So like you can see, Miss Chilson is last names A through DAQ, and then it goes through all the way to Mrs. Jones. Then we also have additional staff. We have our school social worker, Miss McClung, who works with us in the counseling office, Miss Shofady, who is our graduation coach, Miss Quinlan, who is our 504 and response to intervention chair, and then Miss Gibson, who is our school psychologist. So we all work very closely together in the counseling office to support you and your student, as well as our wonderful parent liaisons. We have Miss Kang, who is our Korean parent liaison, Miss Navas, who is our Spanish parent liaison, and then our fabulous support staff, Miss Movia Leal, who is our registrar, and then Miss Buenaventura, or Miss B, as we call her, who is our professional assistant. She's going to be the first face that you'll see when you come into the counseling office, and she just helps keep us running and answering questions. So this is everyone that is in the counseling suite. Here are just some little reminders of our social media presence. So if you wanted to like us, love us, follow us, here is where you can find us on Facebook. Here's where you can also find us on, I guess it's called X now, but for me, it's always going to be Twitter, and then also Instagram. So these are places where we're going to be, posting pictures of fun things that we have done, announcements. Like it's just another place where you can get information if you are really into social media and want to stay connected that way. This is how you can find us. So this slide is how your student can go about making an appointment with their counselor in the counseling office. So what they can do is we have a couple different ways. Your student can come into the counseling office, and every counselor is going to have a QR code that your student can scan, and that will pull up our calendar so that they can choose a time that we're available that also works with their schedule. And then once they schedule that appointment, they will get a confirmation email, and that will act as their pass to come to the counseling office during their appointment time. They can also go online to the counseling webpage, so they can get there if they go to the Chattahoochee homepage and then follow the instructions. So they'll go to the Chattahoochee homepage, click on our counseling office, and then on the right-hand side, they'll will see a link for, I put a picture here. So all of the different people who are in the counseling office, that's where you would be able to write, or your student would be able to make an appointment with any of those people. These are really for students who want to make an appointment to do those two methods that I mentioned. Parents, guardians, if y'all want to make an appointment with your student's counselor, we just ask that you send us an email, and then we can coordinate time to set up that works with our schedule and that works with your schedule. So this is really more just for when students are in the building. If they want to come and make an appointment with us, this is how they would go ahead and do it. Okay, so just a little information about Canvas and Infinite Campus. So Canvas is sort of a new thing, and that has replaced for a lot of classrooms Teams. So Canvas is going to be a new learning management system that you can create a parent observer account, which we really suggest that every parent guardian does that for their student, because it just allows you to get more notifications about, okay, what has my student maybe not turned in for a class, or oh, they turned it in but it was a little bit late, or oh, this is what grade they got. It goes into a more detail than what Infinite Campus does. So while we still have Infinite Campus, and it's a great resource because it can tell you, it's how we make school announcements. It's where your student can download their unofficial transcript. You can look and see assignments for a class. But the difference is in Infinite Campus, it's just going to list the assignments. It's not going to give you as many details as you would get in Canvas, which is why we really encourage you to set up a parent observer account in Canvas. Infinite Campus, you're also that's where you can get attendance notifications if a student is marked absent. It's going to have any kind of code of conduct. So it's going to be a little bit more bigger picture things. And then Canvas gets a little more tuned into the assignments, grades, what's going on in your student's class, as well as we are going to have a Canvas portal for juniors that I am in the works of getting that done. So every junior is going to be added to a Canvas portal for the counseling office. And if we have any kind of announcements, if we need to do anything that is just for juniors, that will go into that Canvas portal. So that's also going to be something that students and you as a parent could see as well. It's just so that you can stay in the know, because there are a lot of things that go on in junior year, because we're getting ready for next year, the final year of high school. So those are going to be the main two differences. And if you scan this QR code, which you'll be able to do now if you wanted to, or if you could also wait until after we post it, that will give you step-by-step instructions on how to set up the parent observer account for your student. Okay, so this is sort of the agenda for what we're going to go over tonight. We're going to talk about some basic stuff about, graduation, requirements, credits, all of that good stuff. Then we're going to talk about dual enrollment, college visits, where we can look for scholarships, going to touch on Naviance, and then we're going to end out the meeting with talking about junior advisement meetings and how to schedule that for your student with your student's counselor. All right, so let's get right into it. Something that everyone wants to know, graduation requirements. All right, so every student has to, by the time they graduate, needs to have 23 total credits. Now, these credits have to also be in certain areas. So they have to include 4 credits of English, 4 credits of math, 4 of science. We need to have 3 of social studies. We need to have a half credit of health and a half credit of personal fitness. Then we need 3 credits of either a world language, a fine art, or a career tech. And those can be mix and match, right? You could have 2 credits of world language and 1 credit of fine art, or, 2 of world language, 1 of career tech. So those can kind of mix and match. And then elective credits, we need to have 4. Now, social studies, typically a student is going to do a half semester of American government in their freshman year, and then they will do the half semester of health, and then they will do world history in their sophomore year, US history in their junior year, and then senior year, they will do the half credit or 1 semester of economics, and it's now called personal finance and economics. And then they will do a half semester of personal fitness. So that's typically how we kind of break it down. Now, again, sometimes some students maybe will take American government over the summer, or they'll take health over the summer. As long as we get all of these credits by the time they are graduated, that is what matters. So sometimes some students, their schedules may be a little bit different, but at the end, every student is going to need to have these 23 credits in these different core areas. So semester-long class is going to be half a credit, year-long class is going to be 1 credit. Now, something to note, even though world language is not a graduation requirement, so a student can graduate from high school never having taken world language, it is, though, required if a student is thinking they want to go to a traditional 4-year college or university. Those colleges and universities are going to want to see that a student has at least 2 or 3 years of the same world language. So that means it has to be Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. So you can't mix and match. It can't be like, well, I took Spanish 1 and I took French 1. That's 2 years. It wouldn't count in terms of when you are applying to a college. They're not going to view that as the same world language because it's not, right? So you need to make sure that you either stick with the same world language. And like I said, plenty of students, if world language is, maybe you struggle with it, maybe your student struggles with it, and they're not sure if they're going to be able to do the 2 years. There are options, and that is something that during your junior advisement meeting, you could talk about with your counselor and kind of talk about, okay, what would the options be if I weren't able to do this world language credit? Another thing to make note of is we do have a personal fitness waiver. So that is something that a student can submit if they are an athlete, or the new waiver is very broad. So it's also, there are a lot more options where, if a student has taken rec games, if a student has taken weight training, these are also things that the student can fill out the personal fitness waiver and it can waive that class. Now, what that means is, yes, you have waived that requirement. So it's this personal fitness waiver is saying, okay, I'm waiving out of having to take the personal fitness class, but it means that we'll just have to replace it with another half credit elective. So typically if a student waives out of personal fitness, maybe they end up taking, a dual enrollment class, or maybe they take an art class, or they do something, maybe they decide, okay, even though I've waived out of personal fitness, I still want to do weight training because I want to learn the proper ways to lift weights, right? And again, this is something that your counselor can talk with you in your personal junior advisement meeting. The biggest thing with this is you have to make sure that this is submitted by the end of your junior year. Because if we wait until senior year to try and turn this personal fitness waiver in, it may be, at that point, it's a little too late. So we need to do this by the end of junior year. And it literally is, it doesn't take long. That's the link where you can find the personal fitness waiver. You can also find the personal fitness waiver just on the Chattahoochee homepage as well. And your student can fill it out. It doesn't take long at all. And that's something that they could do if they don't want to take the personal fitness, the actual class. Okay, so this is something called the graduation status report, or the 4-year plan. This is what we as counselors use to make sure that your student is staying on track for graduation. We recommend and encourage you, parent and student, to download one of these. And again, there is a link where you can download a blank. Also, download your unofficial transcript from Infinite Campus, and then just kind of fill out the classes that you have completed. So each box represents a half a credit or a 1 semester course. So when we're looking at English, for example, where it says 9th Lit semester 1 and then 9th Lit semester 2. So that would be if your student took and passed both semesters of 9th Lit, you would be able to check off both of those boxes, and that would represent 1 credit that your student has earned towards that 23 credits needed. This is also something that most of us counselors, when we have your junior advisement meeting, we're going to be using this as kind of a checkpoint to be able to make sure, like I said, that your student is on track, and to be able to show you like, okay, hey, we're doing really well, but you know what? Next year, we only have 2 credits of world language, fine art, or career tech. So next year that's going to have to be one of our electives, right? We're going to have to make sure we pick a class that will fill in that column. So that is something that, again, in your junior advisement meeting, your counselor will go over in more detail. Okay, what are the classes we have to stay on track for graduation? But this is just a good tool for you to have, just so that you and your student kind of are in the know and make sure that you understand what courses they have taken and what they still need to take. Okay, so to go along with sort of graduation requirements, we also need to understand grade point averages. So on here, we have, on one side, we have how Fulton County does grade point average. And then on the other side, we have Hope and Zell Miller GPA, which that is, we're going to go into the Hope and Zell Miller scholarship a little bit later in the presentation. But this I just wanted to include in here just because on your unofficial transcript in Infinite Campus, it is going to have the Fulton County numeric average. So it's going to be on a 100-point scale, and it is going to be cumulative. So what that means is all grades are included on the Infinite Campus unofficial transcript. So that means any high school courses that you took in middle school, any academic, non-academic electives. So that's going to be, rec games, if your student has taken that. If your student has taken Intro to Art, that will be included in this cumulative numeric average. It's going to be weighted. So if your student has taken an honors or an AP or a dual enrollment college class, they get 7 points added to their final grade. That will be included in the Fulton County numeric average. And keep in mind, this is calculated by Fulton County, okay? And this is what is posted on the high school transcript that you will see when you download from Infinite Campus. The way that Hope and Zell Miller GPA is different is they use a 4.0 scale. So you can see there an A is worth 4 points, a B is 3, a C is 2, and an F would be worth 0. One of the main differences, though, is that for the Hope and Zell Miller GPA, they are truly looking at the academic courses taken. So they're looking at your English, math, science, social studies, and world language when it starts at the 2nd year and up. And they're also going to look at academic electives. So that's going to be like if your student is taking newspaper, if your student is taking yearbooks. Some career tech classes are included in that, but not all. So, Essentials of Healthcare is included, but Intro to Healthcare is not. So that's something that, again, you can talk with your counselor, as well as when we get a little further in the presentation, you can also go onto Georgia Futures, which is that's where the Hope and Zell Miller GPA is calculated, because that's by the Georgia Student Finance Commission. And they have a list of the different classes, and it kind of breaks down, okay, this is what is included in your Hope GPA. This is what's not included. So for example, again, rec games, weight training, those kind of classes are not going to be included in your Hope or Zell Miller GPA. They also do weighting a little different. So let's say your students, with the weighted grade, they ended up getting an A, but when you take out those 7 points, it goes down to an unweighted B. Hope and Zell Miller are not going, they're going to remove those 7 points, but they're going to give an additional 0.5 quality points back to that grade if it was an AP or a college course. So for example, instead of your student just receiving a 3 because they got a B in an AP class, they would get a 3.5. So they kind of give a little bit because they recognize that taking an AP or a college course is rigorous. So they're going to give back that 0.5 quality points. A student, though, cannot get a 4.5. So a student would only, even if they got an A unweighted and it was an AP class, they're only going to get a 4.0. They're only going to get those 4 points. They're not going to get 4.5 points. Something to keep in mind too, counselors cannot calculate Hope and Zell Miller GPA for students. That is only calculated by the Georgia Student Finance Commission. So we can't, if your student comes to us and says, hey, can you help me, calculate my Hope GPA? We can't calculate it for you, but we can point you in the direction of Georgia Futures, which is where students can keep track of and the progress of their Hope GPA. And we'll talk a little more about Georgia Futures further in the presentation. We also have a calculating GPA sheet if you are wanting to convert your students' GPA from the 100-point scale to a 4.0 scale. That link is provided there, so you can go and you can kind of play around with some of the numbers and try and figure out, okay, if my student gets a B in this class, how is that going to affect my GPA? Okay, if I get a C, if I get an A. So that's a way that you can kind of play around with the GPA so that you and your student can have a better idea. Related to GPA, we do not report rank or percentile to students, parents, colleges. So if when your student is applying for a college, if it asks what their rank is, it would just be NA because we don't report rank. The only students who are going to know what their ranking is are the valedictorian and the salutatorian. And those are going to be reported after first semester grades are posted in their senior year. Once we know who the val and the sal are, then we contact those students to let them know. But that is the only time that we are going to let a student know what their rank is. Okay, so how do I prepare for my senior year schedule, right? Because classes are always, that's a big one. So the first thing that we say is download your transcript from Infinite Campus and try and fill out that blank status report that we talked about a couple slides ago. So fill in all the classes that you've taken, what you have earned credit for, and just kind of get an idea of, okay, wow, I only need to have this many classes left, or, oh, okay, I need to take this kind of elective. In early spring, your students' current teachers are going to make course recommendations for what classes they are recommending the student take in senior year. So, let's say your student right now is in advanced algebra and maybe their current math teacher is going to recommend that they take AP pre-calculus next year. So that would be something that teachers are going to talk with students. They're going to recommend. Then they're going to give those recommendations to us counselors. We then are going to meet with every 9th, 10th, and 11th grader in the media center in the spring as well. And we're going to go over those recommendations. Part of what we do when we talk with students in the media center is we kind of look at, okay, let's make sure that we're having a balanced schedule, right? Because we understand that there's a lot that goes on during senior year. So we want to make sure that even though your student may have been recommended for multiple honors and AP classes, teachers are making those recommendations in a silo and they don't always know what other recommendations the student is receiving. So it could be that, okay, at the end of the day, your student is being recommended to take 6 AP classes, but maybe that's a little bit too much. Maybe we need to look at that and say, okay, is this really going to be a good balance? And am I going to be able to do this? Because I want to stay on track to be able to graduate, but I also don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So that's where you really have to look at your recommendations, think about the district placement guidelines as well, and what is the best choice for you and your student, right? Because your student knows, like, hey, maybe I've been recommended for all these AP classes, but I have marching band after school, or I'm part of a sport, or I have a job. Maybe I'm helping to pick up siblings from school, and I don't know when I would be able to get all of the work done that goes into an AP class. So that's why it's really important to have that balanced schedule and to kind of ramp up gradually instead of going from, oh, I was taking one AP and now I'm going to try and take 5 APs. That's a really big step. So that is something that to just have those conversations, keep that in mind. And your counselor is also going to be having those conversations with your student as well, talking about balance and talking about, okay, let's make sure that we are setting you up for success, because there are some stresses that come with senior year just because of the nature of senior year. So we want to make sure that we don't do anything to add additional stress onto your student. Now just to talk quickly about some post-secondary options to consider, because maybe not every student wants to go to a 4-year college. Maybe students want to go to a technical college, or they want to take a gap year. Maybe they want to go right into the workforce or the military. So these are just different links that you can go to explore, and your student to explore, okay, what are some technical college options? What is, I think I do want to do a gap year. What would that look like? What does it, what do I need to do to join the military? You're going to learn about having to do the ASVAB. Kind of looking at the differences between doing a 4-year and a 2-year college. There are going to be on Big Futures and in Naviance, which we'll talk about a little bit later, there are some really great tools and inventories that your student can do to kind of help them if maybe they're not quite sure what they want to do. Maybe it's like, okay, well, I think I maybe want to do this, but I don't know. There are some really good tools that Naviance has, as well as these other links on here to just kind of help the student discover, oh, okay, based on my strengths, maybe this is a career, or this is something that I should explore. And I hadn't even thought about that before. This QR code that is on the screen will take you right to the moving forward graphic that you see. It will take you there so that you can kind of explore all of the different options as well. And they go into a little bit more detail. But we recognize that while the majority of our population of students, go on to college, college isn't always for everyone, or it might look a little different, and that's okay. So we want to make sure that all of our students have access to all of the materials and resources that they need to be successful. All right, so let's see if we have a student who is hoping and wanting to do athletics in college. There are some NCAA or the NAIA that there are some things that students have to do and parents have to do as well for when you're wanting to do the NCAA clearinghouse. So you first need to register through the NCAA clearinghouse. Then your student would need to reach out to Miss Hagan, and that is where her email address is listed right there in the main office, because she manages the process of sending transcripts to the NCAA. This isn't for college admissions, but it is to fulfill the academic requirements for college sports eligibility. And then after the student registers on the portal, then that's when they would contact Ms. Hagan to request the transcript be sent. When your student is taking the SAT or the ACT, that is the code that they would enter for their scores to be sent to the NCAA Eligibility Center. You want to make sure that you and your student, review the requirements. Because I can tell you that if a student is wanting to do NCAA, let's say they don't pass a class, they're not going to be able to do credit recovery. They would actually need to go to summer school to do the class. So that's something that is a little different from if another student who maybe isn't trying to do college athletics, they could do credit recovery. And obviously if you have any questions, you can always talk with the athletic director, Coach Short, and he would be able to help because he is very well versed in the land of college athletics and all of the things that go into that. Now, for students with accommodations, so if your student has an IEP or 504 accommodations, all colleges are required by law to provide certain support to a student with disabilities or to a student who has accommodations. The high school accommodation plans, though, do not automatically transfer to the college. So your student must initiate the process by contacting the college's disability services office, and sometimes they're called different things depending on the college, to provide the necessary paperwork and to follow the next steps that they would receive from the college. Typically, the paperwork that they need to approve the accommodations are the most recent IEP or 504 plan, the most recent eligibility for special education or 504, the most recent psychological report, and then any other documents that the college may request. But again, the biggest thing with this is the student has to initiate the process. It doesn't automatically transfer when they go to college. So that is something that once they have been accepted to their college choice and have decided where they're going to go, that is then when they would contact that disability services office and talk with the college about how they can get their accommodations and if they need to give the college anything else other than the things that have been listed. All right, so this is another hot topic, the SAT or the ACT. So even though a lot of schools are still test optional, many of them are going back to requiring test scores. So we recommend that students take either the SAT or the ACT for the first time by the spring of junior year. Early in the second semester is best, especially if they plan to use test scores to apply to take dual enrollment classes in 12th grade. The majority of colleges, they don't have a preference over one test or the other. So it really is the preference of if the student wants to take the SAT or the ACT. You can still confirm with the college, or a lot of times if you go onto the college admissions website, a lot of times it will talk about the test scores. And if you really are like, oh, I just want to know if they have a preference, you can always reach out to the admissions office and they will be able to talk with you about that. Peach State Tutoring offers a free diagnostic test to see which one your student would likely perform better on. Because SAT, has a lot of reading and it's more, English heavy, whereas the ACT has more science and geometry and that kind of math. So it could, this is a great resource for your student to take to just kind of see, okay, yep, maybe I would fare better on the ACT versus the SAT or vice versa. We also have, I've included the link about test prep information that we have so that your student, if they're wanting to start preparing to take the SAT or the ACT, there are some resources on there that are great. You can also go online for the SAT. You would go to collegeboard.org. And then for the ACT, it would just be act.org to view upcoming test dates as well as to register for them. Please pay attention to registration deadlines because each test has a late registration deadline, but you are going to have to pay a fee if you register beyond their normal deadline. So just kind of pay attention to that when your student is choosing which one they're going to take and when they're going to take it. Students typically get 4 free score reports that can be sent to colleges and universities each time that they sit for a test. Now, if your student wants to see their score before they send it, right? Maybe they're like, oh, I'm not really sure how I did. I kind of want to know before I decide to send the scores. Then we recommend you opt out of sending the free score report. Wait until your student sees their score and then pay the nominal fee to send the report to the colleges. Because that will just give your student a chance to see their score and decide if this is one that they want to send, or if maybe they want to sit for the test again and maybe they want to super score it. But if you put in the code for the college to be able to use the free score report, your student and you are not going to be able to see how they did before it is sent to the college or university. Please also keep in mind, Chattahoochee, we do not have access to test scores and we cannot send them to colleges. So if your student is applying to a college that needs a test score sent, they're going to need to log into either their College Board account or the ACT account, and they're going to need to have their score report sent straight from there. We cannot access and we cannot send score reports for your student to colleges. Now, we do have some students who may be eligible for registration fee waivers for the SAT or the ACT, and they cover the cost of regular registration, not late registration. So that's, again, why it's really important to pay attention to those deadlines. So these fee waivers are available to 11th and 12th graders who meet the certain requirements, and I've listed out the requirements below. It's if your student is enrolled or eligible to participate in the federal national school lunch program. So if they're getting like free and reduced lunch, if your family's annual income falls within the guidelines that you can find from the USDA Food and Nutrition Service, maybe your family is enrolled in a federal, state, or local program that aids students for low income housing. Your family receives public assistance, right? If any of these scenarios or requirements meet your student, then they could apply to get the SAT fee waiver or the ACT fee waiver. For SAT, students need to create or log into their College Board account and request the fee waiver. If they run into any issues, please have them contact College Board for assistance. If they still are having difficulties after talking with College Board, have them come to the counseling office for help, and we can see if we can get a fee waiver for them. For ACT, students need to just come to the counseling office to request a fee waiver, and we can help them with that. Okay, so now we're going to jump to dual enrollment. So I know a lot of you probably already maybe know about this or have heard about it. So dual enrollment is where it allows students to earn high school and college credit simultaneously. And your student can take this college class and it is funded by the state of Georgia, so you don't have to pay for it, which is kind of fabulous. So who can participate? Ninth graders aren't eligible to participate, but Auburn University, you can be 11th or 12th grade. Gwinnett Technical College can be 10th, 11th, or 12th graders. Georgia State is 11th and 12th grade. And Georgia Institute of Technology, or Georgia Tech, is 10th, 11th, and 12th. Now, Georgia Tech is a little different because you have to have taken AP Calculus BC. And if you're a 10th grader, you have to have met test scores. So they're a little bit different. 10th graders are only allowed to take career tech electives at Gwinnett Tech unless they have required test scores, which is a 1200 on the SAT or a 26 on the ACT. If your 10th grader meets those minimums, then they can take core or academic courses. But at this point, we're talking to juniors. So your junior would be able to apply to any of the schools listed because by the time we're going to be doing it, they're going to be 12th graders. Okay, so some things to keep in mind with funding. students can receive funding for no more than 30 credit hours with dual enrollment. So that is roughly 10 dual enrollment classes, because one dual enrollment class is usually 3 credit hours. Now, the only the only one that may be different than that is if your student, let's say, is taking a class that has a lab, then that lab is going to be a 1 credit hour. So instead of being 3 credit hours they're taking, they would be taking 4. Only academic and career tech courses will receive state funding, and students cannot be funded for the same course twice. So let's say a student is enrolled and is taking economics, and then they end up withdrawing or they end up not passing economics. They would not be able to be funded to take economics again. Students who withdraw from 2 college classes at any point cannot continue in the dual enrollment program. So that's why it's important when a student has come to a counselor and says, oh, I think I want to withdraw from my college class. We really have that conversation of, okay, understanding what this means, and making sure that this is really the best thing that we need to do moving forward. Students can pay to take a course after their state funding is exhausted. So after they've used those 30 credit hours, or if they choose to register for a course that is not on the Georgia Future State directory. Now, self-pay courses are still going to be placed on the high school transcript regardless of the grade that your student earns. And a lot of colleges won't allow for a self-pay course if the student still has funding. So if the student still has funding with those 30 credit hours available to them, then they won't allow for the self-pay option. So the self-pay option is really, it's more for, okay, my student has already taken 30 credits of dual enrollment and they want to take 1 more class. Then that would be, okay, you can self-pay to take that class. The only dual enrollment class that a student will need to take the EOC or the end of course test is American Literature, and that's English 2130. Now, before a student can take 2130, they have to have done English 1101 and English 1102. So most of our students, I would say 95% of them, usually take American Lit here at Chattahoochee, and then they just go right into, if they're going to do English, they do English in senior year 1101 one semester, and then maybe they do English 1102 the second semester. But if your student is wanting to try and do American Literature through dual enrollment, just know that they're going to have to take the EOC for that class. Okay, so next steps for dual enrollment. So we are going to have a dual enrollment night, which is going to be virtual, on Tuesday, February 4th. And Mrs. Chilson, who is our dual enrollment queen, is going to go over all of the specifics about the application process. So an email is going to be sent out with a link. We are going to do, Hooch Happening Blast. Like, it's going to be listed everywhere the closer we get to that date in February. Parents, guardians should also discuss with their student, hey, do we think dual enrollment is a good fit? And, because dual enrollment, it takes a certain kind of student in terms of, you are considered a college student. So you have to make sure that you are checking your email, like in your college email, that if you have questions or an issue, that your student is the one reaching out to the professor. They're staying on top of their deadlines. And so for some students, it's a really good fit. And then for other students, they're like, you know what, maybe that's a little bit too much autonomy at first. And so I need to kind of ease into it a little bit more, or maybe, I'm not sure if I want to do this. So this is a conversation that it's good to have before your student starts the process of trying to participate in dual enrollment. If y'all decide that you want to move forward with it, also determine, okay, which college, university do I want to apply to? And make sure that you meet the admission requirements for that particular school. The Chattahoochee Dual Enrollment website is a great resource. It's the Weebly that you see on your screen. And that, again, Mrs. Chilson has done a wonderful job of breaking down for each school, hey, this is what they're looking for. This is what you need to have. This is, If you're going to do a test score, this is what you need to have. If you're going to do the AccuPlacer, this is what you need. So she has done a really good job to kind of help your student determine, okay, do I want to do Georgia State or maybe it's Gwinnett Tech? Do I want to try for Georgia Tech or do I want to just stick with Georgia State, right? So it kind of gives you and your student a lot of different information to look at, okay, what is going to be the best fit for me? If your student is wanting to do dual enrollment, again, make sure that they take the SAT or the ACT as soon as possible. There are the websites again for College Board is for the SAT, and then obviously ACT is for the ACT. Georgia State or the Perimeter College and Gwinnett Tech do allow students to take the AccuPlacer, which is their sort of test that will help to place the students in lieu of the SAT or the ACT. So again, that information about the AccuPlacer can be found on the Weebly, as well as if you went out to either of those college websites and looked up their dual enrollment program, they're also going to be able to tell you about the AccuPlacer. So Fulton County, so there are different deadlines. There's deadline for Chattahoochee, and then there's deadlines for Fulton County. So you want to make sure that you and your student are following all of the specific directions and making those deadlines. The Fulton County dual enrollment deadline is March 31st for all students who are planning to participate in dual enrollment for the next school year. So again, that is something that your student has to have everything done by that deadline for Fulton County in order to be able to participate in dual enrollment for the following year. We do a really good job, I think, in our counseling office of making sure that we're communicating about when deadlines are coming up for dual enrollment. We have help sessions. Last year, we had 9 help sessions for dual enrollment. So if your student has a question, we are here ready to help them and answer it so that they can make sure that they get everything done that they need to get done. Okay, so now we're going to talk about another fun thing that starts happening in junior and senior year, going on college visits. So when your student is thinking and researching colleges, we want your student to think about, okay, what is my safety school? What is my match school? And what's my reach school? And a good place to start is to have 2 schools in each category. So a safety school is going to be, okay, my student knows, like, based on their academic profile, based on everything on paper, their GPA, their test scores, all of that. The school that I'm applying to, I am notably higher than the average admitted student. So I know that based on my credentials, I would be a shoo-in. I would get into this school. It would be no problem. That would be a safety school. A match school is your student is like, yeah, I feel pretty good about, yeah, I think based on my GPA and my test scores and the other things the school is looking for, yep, like I'm right in line with the type of student that is usually admitted. So that would be a match school. That would be a school that you're like, yep, the student is feeling pretty confident that they would be admitted. A reach school is going to be, okay, maybe my academic profile, puts me at the lower end of the students that they admit, or maybe I'm not even quite hitting their requirements, but I'm still really wanting to apply because I really love this major at this school, or I really want to live in the city where this school is, or whatever the reason may be. So it's fine to apply to those schools and to have those reach schools. You just want to make sure that all of our schools are not reach schools and that we're not spending all of our resources and time to schools where we may not have as good of a shot to be a competitive applicant. So that's why we're saying we recommend have 2 in each category, and definitely, you need to plan to apply to at least 1 safety school so that in case something happens and you don't get into your match school or your reach school, you have that safety school in your back pocket that you can say, okay, but at least I have this. And, maybe you start there and then you transfer to somewhere else, right? That is what I did. I transferred a few times when I was an undergraduate. And that's what a lot of students do. And that's totally fine. And everyone's path is going to look different. And that is fine. Okay. And your student will be okay and they will end up where they're supposed to end up. This is also a link to an article to just kind of help again talking about these different types of schools and how your student, how to go about picking it and making sure that we're applying to schools that make the most sense. So for college visits, so we have college visits that the college comes to Chattahoochee, and we also have off-campus college visits. So if a student wants to, we have a sandwich board that sits in front of the counseling office, and Miss B, our assistant I talked about earlier, she will list what schools are coming to visit Chattahoochee. So if your student is walking by and they say, oh, I didn't know that, for example, Duke was coming, I'd love to go and learn more about them. They can register for the time that Duke is going to be here. So they get 7 of those visits per school year. So they will register in Naviance to do that. They are responsible for if they miss any work in the class that they are going to be missing to come and do this college visit. So they need to make sure that they talk with their teacher to say, hey, I really want to go. This school is going to be here. I want to go and do the visit, to just make sure they're not going to miss, a test or reviewing for a final or whatever it may be. And then we also are recommending, make sure that you research the college before the student comes so that they can have questions to ask the representative from this college, because we want them to use the time wisely and get the most out of the visit as they possibly can. Now, if your student is going off campus to, let's say they want to go and they want to, you over fall break, you wanted to go and, visit a college in Alabama or a college in Tennessee, students are allowed 6 pre-approved absences from school. So let's say you're wanting to take your student out on the Friday before you're planning to go for that weekend. You could use one of these 6 pre-approved absences. So face-to-face, you would pick up the pre-approved form either in attendance, or you can actually also print it off the Chattahoochee website, or you can have an official note sent from the college on the college letterhead to attendance saying that, yes, your student went and they did this off-campus college visit. Okay, so those are the two different ways that your student and you can go and view and visit colleges. We really recommend that you do this as much as you can, because sometimes on paper or online, if you're doing research and you're looking at it, it could be like, man, this school looks amazing. I know I'd want to go there. And then maybe you go for a tour and your student says, oh, okay, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. Or maybe it doesn't feel as good as I thought it was. Or, oh, it's smaller. Or, oh, it's bigger. I didn't realize it was right in the city, whatever it may be. So we recommend, the more you can go and visit the colleges, the better, just so that you and your student can truly get an idea of, okay, what is it going to be like if I were to go here? So it just kind of helps to, that can sometimes help narrow down too where your student and you are going to spend your time and your money applying to schools. So this is just a list of some college fairs, virtual as well as in person. And then we also have one that is coming up the end of this month at Northview. We have the links here. So if you want to register to be able to go and just learn more and see more about different colleges. Okay, so now the next important thing to talk about is money. How are we going to pay for this college, right? Because college is expensive. So let's talk about scholarships and how we're going to do that. So briefly, we're going to just kind of go over different types of scholarships, right? So you have the institutional scholarships. These are where the college may offer it for incoming freshmen based on criteria. These kind of scholarships, generally, you're going to be able to find on like the financial aid website, or if you were to call the financial aid office of a college or university, they're going to be able to tell you about any kind of institutional scholarships that they may offer. Then you also have local scholarships. So these are going to be provided by local organizations. Maybe parent guardian where you work, maybe your employer has a scholarship that your student could apply for. Sometimes banks or religious groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, which I think they're now called Scouts of America, service organizations, right? These are the different type of local scholarships that potentially they can, have some money there for your student. Then we have national scholarships, which are going to be nationwide, right? And so a lot of times they're going to offer larger awards, but they also are going to have a lot more students applying, right? So this is like the Coca-Cola, Questbridge, Posse, Hispanic Scholarship. So even though these are bigger amounts in terms of financial aid and money, a lot more people are going to be applying to these national scholarships. So that's just kind of something to just keep in mind as well, that, okay, I know that I may be going up against a lot of different students who are applying because this is a nationwide scholarship. Then you also have the Academic Common Marketplace. So this is something that, let's say you really want to go into mortuary science, right? You really want to learn about how to be, work in a mortuary, but there's really no school in Georgia that offers that. But maybe you found a school in Alabama that does. Potentially, that school could, if they are part of the Academic Common Marketplace, you could potentially get in-state tuition, even though you would be an out-of-state student. But again, this is going to be for very niche majors. It's not going to be like, oh, I want to study business. Well, no, that's going to be something that you wouldn't be able to find that on the Academic Common Marketplace. But like I said, mortuary science, equine science, things that are just very, very niche and kind of specialized, that is going to be more about potentially you could find that. And that's why we included the link, so that if you or your student want to go and just kind of see some more examples of what that could look like, that's why that link is there for you, so that you can kind of explore and see what different options you could have. In Naviance, which again, we'll talk about Naviance a little bit later, but when your student logs into Naviance, they can click on the colleges tab at the top and then look under scholarships and money. And that will also open up a scholarship searching tool. So your student can put in all sorts of different filters, about the scholarship that they're looking for. And it can tell them and you, hey, these are all of the different options. It will tell you what's required, kind of give you an idea of what your student would need to do, because every scholarship is sometimes going to be a little bit different in terms of what your student is going to need to do to apply for the scholarship. So that's why Naviance is a really great tool for so many things, and this is one of them. Okay, so I said we were going to talk about Hope and Zell Miller a little bit more. Okay, so to qualify for the Hope Scholarship, your student needs to have a 3.0 Hope GPA. So remember, that's when, kind of back towards the beginning of the presentation, that's that Hope GPA where it's really only going to include the core academic classes, some career tech classes, academic electives, but it's not going to include like intro to art or marketing principles or rec games, right? And the student has to have a 3.0. They do not round up. So if your student ends with a 2.999, it will not be rounded up to a 3.0. So that is something that, when your student and you are kind of monitoring their Hope GPA, that's just something to kind of keep an eye on and see like, okay, yep, we're good, or oh, we're at that 2.98. Now let me go back and let's kind of use that GPA calculating sheet and see if we can figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get myself over that threshold so that I would qualify for the Hope Scholarship. Students also, to get the Hope Scholarship, need to have completed at least 4 rigor classes. Most of our students, by the time they graduate, this most of them have completed. So this would be an example of, advanced algebra, or the algebra class that your student takes in senior year, the second year or higher of a world language. So if when your student takes physics, that would be a rigor class. So like I said, most of our students, by the time it is graduation, they will have met this requirement for having the 4 rigorous classes. With Zell Miller, it is your student has to have a 3.7 Hope GPA. So it's a higher GPA, Hope GPA. They still need to have those 4 credits of rigor, but they also need to have test scores. So they need to either have a 1200 on the SAT or a 25 on the ACT. So if your student hits all 3 of those, then they would be eligible for the Zell Miller. A student is either going to be eligible to receive the Hope Scholarship or the Zell Miller. It's not, can I get both? It's you either qualify for one or the other. Within the Hope Scholarship, a portion of the standard tuition is covered for attendance at a Georgia public school. For Zell Miller, 100% of the tuition is going to be covered. I know right now with Hope, it is 100% of last year's tuition. So like if a student was going in there and they're getting the Hope Scholarship right now, 100% of whatever the tuition was for last year would be covered. Whereas for Zell Miller, it would be 100% of the tuition for this year. So it usually ends up still being pretty comparable and a really good chunk of money that a student, if they're able to qualify for the Hope Scholarship, it's still going to be a large portion of the tuition that is covered, which definitely helps with the cost of attending college. Transcripts are uploaded to Georgia Futures in mid-September. If you and your student don't see their Hope GPA, then you need to check to make sure that your Social Security number is in your Georgia Futures profile. If you don't have a Social Security number, or there are different requirements for eligible non-citizens, and all of those requirements and everything is included on the Georgia Futures website. Please note, like I had said before, Georgia Student Finance Commission, they are the only ones that can calculate Hope or Zell GPA. So please don't ask your counselor, because we can't do that for you. It's only the Georgia Student Finance Commission who calculates it. Either the FAFSA or the GSF app serves as the application for Hope and Zell Miller, and that just needs to be completed prior to your student's graduation. And then on this slide, this is just another great little video from Georgia Student Finance Commission about sort of the Hope and Zell Miller scholarship, and goes into a little bit more detail about what it is and how to qualify for it. This is also a screenshot of when your student is logging into Georgia Futures. This is what they will see. So again, Georgia Futures it's a fabulous resource for students and families. It provides so much more comprehensive information on Hope, on Zell, on like the rigor requirements, about FAFSA, stuff in here about dual enrollment, college plan, I mean, like everything. So this is just an example of, if you were wanting to know a little bit more about understanding, okay, talk to me more about Hope Scholarship, this would be the page that you could go to. And it would tell you, okay, here's, if I want to know like basic eligibility, if I want to know initial academic eligibility, if I want to know award amounts, right? This Georgia Futures is going to go over all of this. And then you can also see that third tab says how to track your HOPE academic eligibility. So that's going to sort of say, okay, this is how you can track and keep monitoring your HOPE GPA progress. So if your student already has an account, fabulous and wonderful, good job. If not, easy thing to sign up for, so that you and your student can start looking and understanding a little bit more about HOPE scholarship. If you have not set up an account, when you are setting one up, please make sure that your student's legal name, address, and social security number are entered correctly. If even one little thing is off, if one number is switched or a middle name isn't put in, if anything is off, there will be an issue with the Georgia Student Finance Commission and the transcript coming from us at Chattahoochee. They will have an issue kind of communicating and talking with each other, and you won't be able to see your HOPE scholarship. Or your HOPE GPA. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you enter everything correctly. Okay, so that's the HOPE and Zell Miller scholarship. Now the HOPE and Zell Miller grant, this is for students who are working towards a certificate or a diploma at a technical college in the system of Georgia, or certain university system of Georgia schools. These, again, you can learn more about the HOPE and Zell Miller grants on Georgia Futures. There's a link at the bottom, as well as this little video. The nice thing about if your student is wanting to do the HOPE or Zell Miller grant is they're not required to graduate from high school with a specific GPA. So it's not like they have to have a 3.0 HOPE GPA in order to be eligible for the HOPE grant. Now, with that said, when the student is working towards their certificate or diploma at the technical school or one of the university system schools, they do have to, for the HOPE grant, they have to maintain a 2.0 GPA at the college at the different checkpoints. And similar to the HOPE scholarship, the HOPE grant will cover a portion of the student's tuition. For the Zell Miller grant, the GPA a student needs when they're in the college is a 3.5. And the Zell Miller grant award amount is the standard undergraduate tuition rate based on the school the student attends and the number of hours enrolled. So there's a little bit more that goes into the Zell Miller grant than the HOPE grant. And that's why we've included that link as well as this video, so that it goes into a lot more detail about who is eligible, what it requires. But it can really be a wonderful thing to help a student who is working towards that certificate or diploma at the technical college. Okay, so now Naviance. So hopefully your student already has kind of played around with Naviance and already sort of knows Naviance. But in case not, or in case you parents aren't quite sure what it is, Naviance is something that is a college and career readiness software. So this is something that students can use to help with college planning, can take career assessment inventories, kind of like I was talking about before. Trying to, maybe I don't really know what I want to do, so I'm going to use one of these career assessment tools on Naviance to kind of help give me an idea of, oh, based on my answers, maybe I should go into something in the medical field, or maybe I would be good, a good teacher, or whatever it may be. So that's what Naviance can help your student plan for. Every high school student already has a Naviance account, and they sign in through ClassLink, which is the graphic at the bottom. That is, if a student was in ClassLink, that's what the Naviance looks like. So that's how they will log in. Announcements on the main page when your student logs in are going to be tailored to each grade level. So an 11th grader is going to see something maybe a little different than a 9th grader would or a senior would. Self-discovery is one of the things where your student can explore personality traits, and it provides information about, okay, how does your personality translate into a possible career, and maybe what would work with what you're wanting to do based on your personality and how you answered these questions. Then careers. So you can also look at different careers. There's this wonderful thing called Road Trip Nation, which we talk about in a couple slides, I think, which is, let's say, okay, I think I want to be, I want to go into the business world and I want to be this. On Road Trip Nation, they have compiled a list of videos of people in different, in that different field, and have talked with that person about, okay, what did you have to go to school for? How long were you in school? What does your day look like? What do you normally do as this person in business? So it gives students kind of an inside look at, oh, okay, wow, what I thought this person would do is maybe a little bit different than what they actually are telling me their day-to-day work is. So it kind of gives students a better idea of different careers and kind of what they may look like. This is also where students can look for colleges, search for those scholarships like we talked about, kind of research different colleges, kind of be able to put in different filters and say, okay, I think I want to go to a big school, or maybe I want to go to a smaller school. Do I want to be urban? Do I want to be rural? Right? So it's different things that they can put in, and Naviance will help kind of narrow that down and give them some options, or show them, okay, hey, here are some colleges that would maybe be worth looking at. This is also how your student will register for college visits at Chattahoochee, as well as communication is going to be sent out to students and parents by grade level. So like when I sent out the reminder emails about the junior information night happening tonight, I used Naviance. That was how I sent out that email to the big group of 11th graders and their families. So that's also how we're going to communicate different district mandated tasks as well for students, because every grade level is going to have different assignments or bridge bill activities that they need to do and that they're district mandated. So for example, when your student, logs in as an 11th grader, this is an example of a current 11th grader and sort of what their page looks like. So you can see, we have the welcome to Naviance. Their welcome messages about tonight is about reminding them, hey, we're having this meeting. Here's the link. It's also where it says tasks from my school, which we're going to talk about on the next screen. That is those district mandated bridge bill, those things that every 11th grader needs to complete. So if a student were to, you're looking at the Naviance account with your student. If you were to click here where it says go to my planner, this is something that would show up. So these are for every junior, they need to complete the 11th grade bridge bill and junior survey. They need to add 3 colleges to their favorite list, and they need to complete the SuperMatch college search. So these are all things that every single junior is asked to complete. And that's just to help them with, trying to figure out some of the stuff that we've been talking about, right? Figuring out what colleges, or, doing the survey, filling out different things to just kind of help give us an idea as well of, okay, where are our juniors at and kind of what's going on. So then if you were to go back to the main page and look at, okay, if I were to hit self-discovery, these are all of the things that are going to show up. So self-discovery, again, it's going to include tools and assessments that help students explore their interests, their strengths, potential career paths. A lot of times it includes personality assessments, career interest surveys that provide insight into suitable career choices based on that individual student's attributes and preferences. So the aim of this is to assist students in gaining a better understanding of themselves and identifying potential career options that align with their abilities and their interests. Then if we were to move over to the careers, this is where kind of the road trip nation that I was talking about. So the career section is going to provide information about various career options. So it typically is going to include detailed descriptions of different professions, including maybe the job responsibilities or required qualifications, salary expectations, right? So just kind of some basic info about different careers. This section also helps students research and learn more about the careers that they may be interested in. And this is, again, where that road trip nation, where they have people who are in the field talk about their journey and how they got into the profession. And I'm telling you, I wish I had had that when I was in high school, because I think it would have helped me get to where I am a lot faster. So that is a fabulous, fabulous resource. And then colleges. So this is where your student can be looking for the different scholarships like we talked about. They can explore and research different colleges and universities. This includes information about specific institutions, such as maybe admission requirements, what the campus life is like, academic programs, application deadlines. And this is where students can create lists of colleges that they are interested in, as well as doing the super match, which is I see right over here. We talked about that's one of the things that every junior is asked to do. And it's a college search tool within Naviance that allows students to search for colleges and universities that match their specific preferences and criteria. So again, it just kind of helps students identify and narrow down potential schools that align with their academic, extracurricular, their personal preferences, sort of the things that they are looking to have for when they apply to a school. And then lastly, the planner section, which you see right over here, that is where that's a tool that allows students to create and manage their academic and career goals. That's where they're going to be able to see their tasks is going to be in their planner section, as well as any other to-dos. So that really is just kind of to help them sort of keep on track. So Naviance is a fabulous, fabulous tool, and it can be a lot of fun for your student to, I know I have done a couple of the career interest profiler. I've done the personality under self-discovery and it's just kind of interesting to see what, based on my answers, what type of careers. And I'm happy to say I am in the right career based on my answers and what the inventory told me. I am right where I should be. So that is a ringing endorsement for Naviance being able to help your student potentially point them in the direction if they're not quite sure where they're wanting to go. Okay, so let's talk about junior advisement meetings. So these are going to be held either virtually or in person. And the parent guardian, you can select your preference. We just ask that prior to selecting a day or time for your meeting, that you please coordinate a day and time that is best for the parent and the student, because we're not able to offer duplicate meetings for one student. So it can't be like, well, the parent is going to come and then we want to have another one for the student. We have too many students to get through that we can't have multiple meetings. So that's why it's really important to just make sure that when you're making the appointment that you and your student, it's a time when they're going to be able to come. Typically, if a student if maybe they're already in a dual enrollment class or they're taking an online class, that period is ideal because they're usually either off campus, or if they're doing an online class, they could potentially be in the virtual lab. So that would be a perfect time to come in and have this junior advisement meeting. These junior advisement meetings are 20 minutes and your student is expected to attend, okay? If your appointment is not scheduled by November 1st, now this does not mean it has to be completed by November 1st. It just means it has to be booked. So if an appointment has not been booked by November 1st, then your student's counselor is going to call your student in for an individual meeting. We will pick a time. We will look at it and say, okay, Johnny, I'm going to call him in during his lunch period, or I'm going to call him in, during his virtual lab class. So again, you don't have to have completed the meeting by November 1st, but it does need to be booked by November 1st. Otherwise, we, the counselor, will just schedule the meeting and we'll send a pass for your student. The confirmation email from the counselor will serve as the student's pass to miss class on the day time of their advisement. Your student is responsible for showing up to the counseling office a few minutes before their appointment time. We are not going to be sending additional passes to your student. So they are responsible for making sure they know when they're supposed to be here and getting themselves here a few minutes before so that we can start on time. If the parent guardian is going to be participating and joining us on Teams, then the student will still come to the counselor's office and the student and the counselor will join the Teams meeting together in the counselor's office. And that's how we will do that. Okay, expectations before we have these junior advising meetings. So to ensure families and students are fully prepared for the upcoming junior advisement meetings, there are some essential tasks that we just ask to be completed at home prior to the meeting so that we can make the most of our 20 minutes together. So the first one is we want you to complete all of your Naviance tasks. Okay, so that is the bridge bill, it's the add 3 colleges, it's doing that super match college search. So we're asking that students have completed those before before they come for their junior advisement meeting. Then we also ask that families are expected to, engage in discussions from the results of the college and career search test and Naviance. We're also going to have a junior advisement topics for students and parents to discuss at home. That will also be when we post this recording and the presentation on the counseling page. We will also put that document so that you can print it and see the different topics to discuss at home. And then if you have any topics that you want to maybe go into a little more depth or you have some more questions about, you then can bring those to talk with us in the junior advisement meeting. I've also included a link, so in case any parent guardian needs help with like downloading the Microsoft Teams app or how that's going to be working, that link will kind of, it's a support, it will sort of walk you through if you need help with Teams. And then what you can expect from your counselor during the meeting. We're going to be reviewing your students' college and career plans or post-secondary plans. We're going to be looking at that graduation status report. And we're going to be talking about, okay, what are the potential courses for senior year schedule? So those are the things that you can expect we are going to be covering and talking about. So here are all of the links for you to book your junior advisement meeting with your student's counselor. You can start booking them using these links. And then just as a reminder, please make sure that you have booked something by November 1st, because if you have not, your student's counselor is going to choose a time for them to meet with your student. And you may not be able to be a part of that conversation. So if you really want to be there, make sure that you book it by November 1st. Okay, and that is the end of the slideshow. Let me come over here and see my counselors that are on here that have been helping with the chat. Are there any questions that we need to cover or go over?
I don't see any questions that we didn't answer.
Okay. No questions? Oh my gosh. Okay. Does that mean I just did such a great job, you guys, that you don't have any questions? Okay. Well, if you do think of any questions after, and let me make sure that
Wait.
Oh,
there is a question. Is there a
okay.
minimum amount of classes that seniors can take? Minimum?
So as long as, so seniors can take something called a senior course reduction. That is if you are on track, if you have, by the time we're starting senior year, if you have, I believe it's 18 credits. As long as the student has 18 credits going into senior year, then you could potentially do a senior course reduction, which means that instead of having a 7-period day, you would maybe only have a 6-period day. And that's something that you're in your junior advisement meeting when you're going over your potential schedule for senior year. Your counselor would be able to go over that with you if you're eligible to do that.
Okay. Person is asking, can you please share the appointment link in the chat?
So those appointment links are going to be, you will be able to click on those when we have posted this recording and the presentation onto the counseling website. So that will be, and I'm hoping to have those posted tomorrow. Okay, so we have a question. So the HOPE GPA is continuously changing with the students' scores. Is this right? Yes. So your students' HOPE GPA, depending on, it's just like their other GPA, right? Depending on what grade they are getting, that is going to potentially make their HOPE GPA a little bit higher or a little bit lower. So that's why it's important to kind of be monitoring your students' HOPE GPA and to kind of stay on top of, okay, how did this, my student got a B. How did that affect their HOPE GPA? Okay, they got a C. How did that affect it? So yes, that is why we recommend that you just kind of keep track of it and monitor it so that you're not taken by surprise or your student's not taken by surprise.
Okay, let's see. It says, is there an action to be taken to get the Zell Miller or Hope Scholarship?
So I'm not sure what you mean when you say, is there an action? I don't know if maybe,
they would have to go on Georgia Futures to apply.
Yes. Well, they would either have to do the FAFSA or they could do the GSF app. That would kind of be, in a sense, their application to be able to see if they would be eligible for the HOPE Scholarship or the Zell Miller. There's really no other action that needs to be taken in terms of trying to apply for that. That kind of acts as the application. Does band count as an elective?
So this is Ms. Blunt. Similar to Ms. Johnson's answer to a question earlier in the presentation in the chat. So when we're looking at a student's work towards their graduation requirements, we first use those classes to count for the fine art, world language, and career tech areas. And also, of course, the academic subject areas as well. And anything additional then will count as an elective.
So band is one of those classes where it can kind of count. It could be counted in one of two columns, either in just the elective column or in the fine art, career tech, world language column. So the junior year and senior year's GPA is good. It can make previous.
Yes. So if a student's GPA is maybe a little bit lower than you would like in maybe 9th and 10th grade, then having higher grades in junior year and senior year, it can help make up a difference in a GPA gap. Depending on how much of a gap there was, it kind of all depends on how low the GPA was previously and how much of an improvement there is.
In the appointment, my son's counselor is not available in the month of November or December. Will the schedule be updated? So there is potentially, that could be me that you're looking at. I am going to be on maternity leave for November and December. So that is probably what you're referring to. There is going to be a long-term sub who will be here even though I will not be. So she will be able to, I will try and get as many junior advisements done before I go on maternity leave. And then once I am, Miss Edwards is going to be the long-term sub here in my place, and she will make the appointment.
Uh-oh.
When I return in January, any student that hasn't had a junior advisement, I will make sure that I get those scheduled and get those done. To apply to college, does the student have to have the Social Security number for Georgia resident?
So, this is Miss Blunt again. As far as applying to college, the question is for anybody listening, to apply to college, does a student have to have a Social Security number for Georgia resident? I would direct that question to the individual college admissions offices. There are some colleges that have certain restrictions on that and others that don't. Students, so this looks like a student asking a question about registering for Navient. No one needs to create an account for Navient. Every single student automatically has one. If you log into ClassLink and then look for the turquoise Navient icon, when you click on it from ClassLink, you will automatically be in your own account.
Yep. Okay, and then as long as time hope GPA is above 3, the student will be awarded. Yes, so when if your student's hope GPA is 3.0 or above, if you are applying to a school that's in the University System of Georgia, then you would be eligible for the Hope Scholarship. Now, if you are to go out of the state of Georgia, then obviously you're not going to be able to get the Hope Scholarship because it is just for the University System of Georgia.
And to add to that, a student does not have to have the 3.0 GPA when they apply to college. They have to have the 3.0. It is not the GPA for Hope and Zell Miller. That's not calculated for the final time until after the student actually graduates.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the recording while I'm thinking about it. And